to Old Wise City Chronicles. I am your host, Gary Allen. This week we are going to talk about historians, and this will be a two-part series. Part 1, we will talk about the early first 7 historians, and at a later time we will talk about a few of the other ones. I ask myself, what is an historian? To me, an historian is a person who collects and compiles stories of a place, person, and a time period, and shares those stories to the public, whether it's in written form or verbally, like we're doing today. So that pretty much sums that up. So we'll get started with the video. If you would, please hit the like and subscribe button, and let's get started with our first historian of the Zanesville Muskingum County area. Elijah Hart Church. Elijah Church's father, Joseph, came to Zanetown from Pennsylvania in 1807. He becomes a shoe cobbler for a small start-up shop. He gets married in around 1808, and in 1809, Elijah Hart Church was born. As a young boy, he watched this place called Zanesville grow from a few settlers to a small town. Elijah watched the hills being cut down and used as field dirt in the creeks to make this river peninsula into a city. When Elijah was 21 years old, he started an apprenticeship as a bricklayer. So Elijah helped build this town also. Many of these buildings are still standing today that he laid brick on. He lived on 7th Street between Elm and Center Street, which was changed to Eldoron. The new freeway went through his old neighborhood. In 1874, when Elijah was 65 years old, he told the history of Zanesville to a Zanesville Courier newspaper man, and did so until his death in 1880 at the age of 71. So this book, with this great collection of stories of people and events as Elijah Church remembered them, was put together by Jeff Carscadden. Our next historian is J.F. Everhart, author and compiler. In 1882, he compiles a history of 17 chapters of the history of Zanesville, from its slow beginnings to when it became a capital of Ohio to the big city. It also has history of each of the townships, which is quite unique and very important in its own right. It's this document that Everhart relied on Elijah Church's early history because he felt it was very good and dependable. And I feel this is a very, very good collection of resources, amazing charts, detailed early mound building Indian history, just a unique book. Some 590 some pages, I believe. You can't go wrong. Civil War history, outstanding. J. Hope Sutter, Past and Present of the City of Zanesville and Muskingum County, published by S. J. Clark in 1905. Hope Sutter is a newspaper guy who worked for the Times-Recorder newspaper. This collection of information is the general history of Muskingum County, sharing the story of the men and women who labored by enterprise or industry to bring the community to a greater rank. He tells the story of men who built the city by name and with bios on them. It is one of the first publications that have the first photographs of Zanesville, and also has the history of the bridges and the builders, of the steamboats and the railroads. It has detailed information of each of the businessmen, and with high quality photos, which was unheard of back then, of each of these men. The book has some 834 pages, jam-packed of full information of organizations, churches, social events. You can't go wrong with this book. I use this book quite often. In my early days of doing Facebook, this was the only book I had, and I highly recommend it. Thomas W. Lewis. Lewis has a 3-volume collection of excellent Zanesville Muskingum County history. Out of all of these that I've talked about, this is right up there as one of my favorites, because Lewis writes and shares the history, telling the reader the who, what, and where, making it easy to understand so that you know all of the facts of the stories that he's telling. Lewis is also a Times Recorder newspaper man, so he knows the importance of the who, what, and where in writing. For myself, I use this volume for all of the Zane Trace commemoration videos that I have made in the last 4 years. The other books that I've talked about prior, I use as backed up to reinforce what Lewis is saying. Another book that Thomas Lewis wrote was Zanesville in the Flood of 1913, which is a history of the 1913 flood in Muskingum County. He was asked by businessman A.E. Starr to put this book together, did an excellent job. Many of the photographers in the community donated photos to this book. It has many photos. It's a great bio of what happened in Zanesville, Ohio. I used this book in making the video of the flood of 1913 for the 100th anniversary of the 1913 flood. I did not know anything at that time about the flood, and through the help of this book, which was very well put together, I got all my background history. So this is a good resource, and again, Lewis made it so that you can understand what they had to go through in that time period with the 1913 flood. So there you go. That's the history of Thomas Lewis, and we thank you for his great work. I wish I could have met him, and we will move on to our next fellow. Norris Snyder. I guess you would have to say that he is a Times Recorder reporter, historian, and because of the modern age of radio and television, he is also a local celebrity. He would be considered one of the best historians in Muskingum County for the works that he has done. He has written 2 hardback books, first being The Wise City, which was published in 1950. This is a excellent book, done a little different and kind of puts a storyline to his writings. It has wonderful pencil drawings by the famous artist Leslie Cope for the early years of log cabins and how the city may have looked back then. Wonderful photography of the time period. Because he was a newspaperman, he had some of the best photographers at that time. So very good book, and it concentrates from the beginning of Muskingum County until the modern age in the mid-50s. Very good book. This book is basically about Bethesda Hospital. It's one of 2 of the hospitals in Zanesville area, and how it got started, and many of the doctors in the area. He also concentrates on some of the other people of the facility, dentists, nurses. So it's a very good book. And then he has numerous other softback books. The National Road story writer Zane Grey, who wrote a number of Western novels that had been turned into movie. Then he writes a book that concentrates the history of Zanesville and Muskingum County for the youth and schools. That is a very good book, and it also has lots of Leslie Cope drawings in it. Jeff Carscatten. Back around 1985, 86, Jeff was in the process of putting together numerous small paperback books of Muskingum County. The famous railroad bridges in Muskingum County was one of his excellent pieces. It talks about railroad lines that were established across Muskingum County, the bridges and How the Railroads Worked. A very good publication. I've used it many times for history things that I've done during that period of time. He also published a book that we've already talked about, the Elijah Church booklet, which is, again, I can't say enough about that book. But his great works is Where the Indians Dance and Frolic. This book is an excellent book. If you like Native Indian history, early explorers in Zanesville Muskingum County, Ohio, he goes into great details. This book took a lot of time, many years, to put all this information together. I use it for all the work I do as reference, line drawings of what the early pioneers' maps look like. I'm a map guy. You learn so much by these drawings, and he has it in this book. So you can't go wrong with this Indians Dance and Frolic book if you're really wanting the pioneer history of men who walked our ground. Great book. Can't say enough. The Times Recorder Publishing Company has printed many historical picture books that capture a small glimpse of history in each picture, telling a story about Zanesville Muskingum County. A big thanks goes out to the Times Recorder Publishing Company for sharing the rich history of Zanesville Muskingum County. So I hope you enjoyed this historic journey about the historians of Zanesville Muskingum County, and if you would, please subscribe, and we'll see you the next time on Old Wise City Chronicles. Thank you.